Welcome to Activate Your Introvert, the weekly show to help you recognize and unlock the entrepreneur skills in your business. Does it make a difference if you have a purpose? Bunny Young was a stunt woman who became a businesswoman and business therapist. Bunny solves burnout in SMEs and aligns people's work-life balance. So, today we get to explore the thoughts of a therapist on introversion when I interview Bunny Young. Also coming up, introverts don't have charisma and don't facilitate your own meetings. So let's start with leadership tip of the week. If you're running a business or a team, chances are you want to improve your team meetings or any other meetings you run, because most people find most meetings ineffective and waste of time. You may have thought that introverts don't engage as much as you'd like in your meetings. One tip that works well is to change the way your meetings are run. Don't run them yourself. Set up a structure for the meeting and get a different team member to run each one. Sounds simple, but it works. Each team member puts their style on your structure, and they get more engaged because they're running the meetings themselves. So you get to focus on the content of the meeting rather than running it. If you want more ideas to improve your meetings, you know where to go. You need to read Running Meetings That Make Things Happen. It's written to improve engagement in your meetings, especially from your quieter team members. Do let me know what introvert myth you'd like exposed, or what tip you'd like that would help you to activate the entrepreneurial skills in your business. But now, let's get on with this week's interview. Welcome, Bunny.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Now, one of the things I always start off is by asking my guests if they're an introvert or an extrovert.
I am an introvert that often finds themselves living in an extroverted world.
What does it mean to you to be an introvert then?
So as a professional speaker, as a consultant, trainer, and coach, I'm often put into situations where the expectation is to socialize, to network, to sell yourself. And so I don't find myself getting energy out of any of those activities. And so from the therapeutic perspective, as a retired therapist, my understanding of the introversion versus extroversion is where I draw energy from and where my restoration places are. And as we said offline, surfing, horseback riding, and time to myself, often taking 1.5 hour long baths, that's my restoration. And it would be quite awkward if there was a crowd around me in my bathtub. And so I don't necessarily find energy from being in large crowds. Actually, for the most part, that provides me a high level of anxiety.
Yeah, and I must admit, my scuba diving, very much the same. Under the water for an hour at a time, complete peace and quiet, energizing on your own. Now, you've got an incredibly rich background of experience to draw on. How does your stunt career inform your business career?
So I think the day that I was diagnosed with a heart condition, this idea of being able to work a job for an X amount of time and then retire kind of just faded away. It dissolved right in front of me. And I said, okay, I don't necessarily have a guaranteed set amount of time. Not that any of us do, but when you get a diagnosis like that, it changes your perspective. And so I found myself diving into things, no pun intended with your scuba diving, to things that I thought I would enjoy and that I thought would be something that I would find my purpose in. So I went from being a stunt woman to an EMT and got a degree in counseling and psychology and did crisis response for a long period of time. What I ended up coming back to is that as a third generation entrepreneur, where I really wanted to make a difference was in the work-life alignment space with helping people to find their purpose the way that I had been on this mission and continue to be on this mission, if I'm honest, of finding and fulfilling my purpose, and how that can ultimately make a difference, not only to the individual, but the company and the world. I think if more people woke up and felt like they truly had a good idea of their purpose and how what they were going to do that day impacted their purpose, fulfilled their purpose, and made the world a better place, then the world would be a better place.
Do you see that there's a difference in the way that introverts and extroverts look at purpose?
I think that in my experience, let me speak from my professional experience, an extrovert looks to others to tell them what they're good at and what their purpose is and what their life's meaning is. Whereas an introvert tends to turn to books and meditation and inward spiritual approach to the purpose-driven life question. And I'm not saying either are the best or the worst approach. I actually think a mixture in being vulnerable as an introvert, if it causes you a bit of uncomfortability to interview others and around you to say, what is it that you feel that I'm good at? What, if I created one of my favorite questions is, if I wrote a book, what would it be called and what would it be on? And so I think that whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, that there's a good combination of both looking inside yourself and looking around your environment and who you have in your environment. It's also a really good way to identify your tribe, because if somebody came up to me and said, you're really good at networking events and hanging out with people and just making friends with everybody, obviously they don't see, the angst that it's causing me, and that I can't wait to get back up to my hotel room and just snuggle with my service dog, Great Dane, and be not in that environment. I can only tolerate so much of that.
So would it be fair to say that knowing your purpose helps you to tolerate more of the uncomfortable or the being with a group of people at a networking event?
It helps me see the bigger picture of, I trust in the aspect that if I'm going to spend X amount of time at a networking event, that there's somebody that I'm going to connect with there. My purpose is going to drive me to make that connection. And then I'm going to dive deeper into that connection rather than walking away from that networking group with the goal of having a pocket full of business cards. So I let my purpose drive me and allow me and steer me into making purpose-driven relationships.
A moment ago, you talked about if I wrote a book, and I guess that would be one of the ways that somebody could start to understand their own purpose. Is there a couple of quick steps that people could do to unlock or discover their purpose in life?
It's a journey. Remember that we've spent decades probably at this point doing different things. And so take a reflection back on those things and take inventory on where you felt aligned in your life, where not necessarily you were the most happiest, but where you felt the most fulfilled, and why, and what that means to you. I remember a trip to Ecuador where I didn't get paid, but I volunteered in an orphanage for a summer. And it was one of the most fulfilling times of my entire life. And reflect and journal on your life and where you've come right now and the impact that you've made, where you've made the most impact and where the most fulfillment has come from your life.
That makes a whole load of sense. Thank you. A couple of quick questions.
Sure.
If you were speaking to an introverted business owner or introvert somewhere in business and they said, Bunny, offer me a piece of advice, what would you say to them?
Be you. That's
Brilliant.
it. The Dr. Seuss quote, you are the only you. There's no one truer than true. I've just butchered Dr. Seuss quote, so you need to go Google this. But
I might put the Dr. Seuss quote in the sleep notes for this show along with your contact
and followed
details.
closely by the Lorax, of course. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's ever going to get better. It's not. As a therapist, I mean that towards you first, and towards your company and the world second.
One piece of advice that you perhaps might give to a leader or a manager who isn't an introvert but has some introverts in the team.
Remember that there are situations that we can find ourselves in to be able to have clear communication and transparent communication, and that in every way, shape, or form that's going to look different for every single human, and be open to that looking different and that sounding different and that feeling different.
That's really powerful. So make sure that you're almost expecting everybody else to be slightly
Yeah.
different. Bunny, I'm sure that some of the people listening would love to get back in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do
Yeah,
that?
so bunnyyoung.com is the best place to go for all the resources. And one of my favorite spaces for us to share a little bit more intimate time is on our YouTube channel, The Power of Purpose. So you can find literally hundreds of hours worth of me sitting in front of my computer with you, sharing my thoughts and my experiences and my knowledge and how that's impacted my world. But there's a ton of resources for free on that website. So please take advantage of
That's
that.
fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And now it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Those crazy stories that I hear and you hear, but some people actually believe. Introverts are not charismatic. Just before I throw that myth in the bin, what is charisma? Olivia Fox-Cabbane's book, The Charisma Myth, Master the Art of Personal Magnetism, talks about charisma having 3 elements. Number 1, presence. Being there in the discussion. Consider that opposite of somebody whose mind is clearly elsewhere. I'll admit to having suffered this one when cooking dinner recently. I returned to the kitchen 25 minutes after preparing the food to wonder what the smell was. I discovered the packaging in the oven and the dinner in the bin. Now, you're probably not that bad, but being present can make a huge difference in how you appear to somebody else. What does being present mean? Listening, taking notice, taking action. All sounds like active listening, which is, of course, an introvert superpower. On the subject of power, number 2, power. People are drawn to confidence. They're turned off by insecurity and self-doubt. Being comfortable with who you are and not being afraid to influence the world around you makes you radiate some power. And number 3, warmth. The importance of making somebody feel important and looking below the surface to see their good qualities. Now, everybody has these 3 characteristics. It's a question of how much they show. Introverts may not be brash, loud people in the room, but are they displaying charisma anyway? So I think we can chuck that myth in the bin. And here's a bonus: 4 actions to display more charisma. Listening. People who demonstrate warmth listen well. Listening properly shows you're interested. To display more presence and charisma, make good eye contact and stand in a way that shows confidence. Your feet shoulder width apart and stand tall. If you're presenting, don't pace up and down. It looks unconfident. Talking. Use metaphors and stories. Stories help people engage with you and understand your point in their way. Engaging with people helps increase the power and presence you radiate. And talk about your bigger picture or vision. Your bigger picture can help people see themselves with a sense of purpose. They can unite because they see themselves in that picture. Alignment helps people to warm to you, and it's the opposite of talking about the detail all the time. It's okay to talk detail, but get some alignment around the less detailed parts first. So that's 4 actions to help you display more charisma. Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.